This set, Zendikar Rising, is feeling stacked. We've got strictly better Vampire Nighthawks. I mean, sometimes it's a 1-3, but more often than not, it's just a better, more powerful Nighthawk. This is power creep gone fucking mad. How dare they? I'm Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. This video is brought to you by channelfireball.com and Ultra Pro. If you didn't know, Channel Fireball got their own preview website now, which I'll link to in the description below, and I'm showing on screen now. You can check that out to get the latest news and previews for the latest set as they go live, being updated like moment to moment by Channel Fireball staff. And they only sometimes get the translations wrong, don't they, James? Speaking of power creep, OMG, the new Ashaya turns all your creatures into forests. This means that Cyclonic Rift is made weaker in this one specific, very niche corner case circumstance. OMG, Wizards. Please ban her in Commander preemptively. I've seen a lot of people get upset about this. Some people were like talking about like how we'd stop playing Armageddons to blow up people's boards and stuff. It feels like people are reaching for the nuclear bomb in the arms race before they even consider that this isn't really much of an arms race. But come on, let's have it banned. Let's preemptively ban it. It's probably more powerful than that fucking otter. Am I right? And I also want to mention Tangled Florahedron quickly as well. It's beautiful. It's adorable. It makes me feel comforted in an ever-increasingly hostile world that doesn't give a fuck about me. Nothing quite takes the edge off of a Sisyphean slog that is modern life in the post-pandemic world than a flower-hedron little lad. Thank you, Tangled Florahedron. Florahedron? Am I even pronouncing it correctly? I don't know, but we don't deserve you, okay? Magic players and the Magic community do not deserve you. But what do we deserve? Well, let's talk about the Flipperino lands, shall we? If you didn't know, we have modal DFCs this set. They're called modal double-faced cards. These are cards with two sides, which you can pick which side you want to use when you use the card. The Zendikar ones are all a spell on one side and a land on the back, but I assume if this is successful and popular, we may see other variations of this in future. Except for when you play these as a land, they are always their front-facing spell type everywhere else, every other zone, in hand, graveyard, and library. So sadly, you can't, for example, Life from the Loam or replay things out of the graveyard as if they're a land with an excavator. You can't do that stuff as far as we know. I don't think the FAQ upon release will change that. All of the mythic ones are easy includes in quite a lot of EDH decks, honestly. They're either splashy, flashy, powerful spells or a tapped land. The opportunity cost of playing these is rather minimal. I have seen people saying like, you know, these aren't good enough, but like the blue one or even the white one which makes some bodies and turns them indestructible, it's a spell on the other side of a land. Now I know I'm quite anti-tap land, but the mythic ones have the lightning bolt effect, which I'll come to more in a moment. Honestly, I think people are underrating how much or how good it is to have a spell that can also be a land, a thing that I think Magic has wanted to try for a long time. So I think all of these are borderline auto-includes because they are like half land, half spell slot. You're not using up a spell slot for this, you can just play it in a land slot instead. Green one, Turn Timber fucking words are hard. Turn Timber Symbiosis is my pick for absurdly, perhaps 60 card playable power level. 7 mana doesn't seem unfeasible in something like Amulet Titan decks in Modern, and it being a tap land 2/3 of the time means that it won't rot in your hand, and it's still a green source that is untapped alongside an Amulet anyway. It digs 7 deep and puts a creature among them into play, hitting things like Dryad of Elysian Groves to enable a Valakut kill, a Golos, or most likely just a Primeval Titan to go get a load of lands. It seems pretty gas, honestly, and I imagine this will see some play in other formats too. Historic, for example, you can dig deep and slam a Nulamorg or a Crater Hoof into play, which seems pretty reasonable, or in a push just play as a fucking land. Like I said, the other cool thing about this cycle of mythics in this DFC slot is we are seeing finally them expand upon the Shockland concept or cost that we're all familiar with from original Ravnica and its returns, with these being ETB tapped unless you pay 3 life in their land form. I'm really happy to see this on a mono-coloured land that has some sort of interesting other ability or utility, instead of the logical but pretty much power-crept conclusion of people have always joked that the Bolt lands coming on from the Shock lands would have 3 land types or 3 types of mana out of them, like the triomes. I much prefer seeing the Bolt land thing come in here. I just think it's much more interesting design. Beyond the mythic ones, I think blue has some of the best ones. 2 interesting ones, to be honest. Sometimes lands, sometimes spells. We have Jawari Perturbation. That's I don't know if that's the right word there. It's sometimes a tapped blue source or a force spike for 2 mana. Whilst it's not amazing and some people are probably thinking that Censor wasn't all that good, it did sit and play, I consider this being playable in slots in standard decks because I believe having the option between a land or a spell to consistently hit your land drops in, say, a control deck is something that people, again, aren't giving enough credit. I think the truly banging one, though, in the non-rare ones is Visions of Salindi. I bet whoever is in charge of translations at CFB mangled that. Was that you, James? This is sometimes a tapped blue source, but otherwise a 3-mana dig 6 cards deep for instant speed or for instant or sorcery in your deck. This feels super tight for finding those Wrath of Gods, those Settle the Wreckages, or how about Approach of the Second Sun, or even, if you're like me, Sphinx's Revelation, because you're always trying to force it and make it work when the card does kind of suck in Modern Magic. Again, I think the other modal half being a land is actually what makes this good. I would never suggest that a 3-mana slightly stronger Anticipate, basically like an Impulse, is going to be rocking anyone's world, but I think the fact that there's a land on the other side, giving it these 2 modes, I think that's really good. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of these, maybe not these 2, I might be slightly off on my predictions, but I think some of these might show up in older formats too. I think Legacy and Vintage might see 1 or 2 of these floating about as well. One of the interesting discussions on this that I've seen is people talking about how certain all-in combo decks, like Belcher, for example, might want Valakut's Awakening. Essentially, if you weren't aware, Belcher requires you to play just 1 land. You go and grab a land grant, you get out of your deck, and then Belcher does basically your entire deck's worth of cards as damage. It does like 60 odd damage to your opponent. Now, this allows them to play, I'll say they currently play a lot of temporary mana and rituals and moxes where they can, stuff like that, to generate mana because they can only play the singular land to make sure the combo is consistent. Now they can play, like for this example here, Valakut's Awakening, which is like a filtering card, which isn't terrible in the deck anyway. That can also be a land in a pinch if they're trying to go off on turn 2 or 3 or whatever. So yeah, we might see one of these show up in Belcher. The other big mechanic in the set that I feel might end up just outright sucking complete shit outside of Limited is Party. I haven't seen any party cards that are interesting just yet. For a party card to see any play beyond Limited or perhaps Standard, it needs to do a good thing on its own, be a good card on its own, with Party being nothing but upside. Best example of this not being the case is the new O-Ring. It's just a worse Banishing Light or O-Ring that gets better when you have Party enabled. I mean, it can cost less with Party enabled, I guess. Whilst I love the art and I love the callback to both Oblivion Ring and Journey to Nowhere, 2 cards that I absolutely love, this is an example of established ideas within a new set using a mechanic and ending up just being a bit shit. Honestly, I'm scrolling through the party cards as I'm making this script, and I'm just seeing nothing which jumps out to me. I mean, there might be 1 or 2 push, but I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being Mutation, or the equivalent of Mutation in Ikoria, where we see like 1 or 2 cards show up in Standard, but besides that, no one is playing these cards anywhere else, and that's fine, that's okay. It's alright to have mechanics that only do something limited. That's not a problem. So, which kicker cards feel good outside of drafting? My guess is going to be Seagate Stormcaller. It feels very, very good. It's a very interesting like design because it feels like a reverse proactive Snapcaster Mage. It will never be as good as Snappy when drawn late in the game off the top of your deck. Simply gives you access to so many options. He essentially, when you draw him, he draws you a choice of a card in your graveyard, right? Famously, he has been a 6-mana sacrificial lamb when combined with Verdict in Standard, or for the longest time being a mainstay of Modern alongside things like Bolt to eke out some reach. Whilst Seagate, not Oracle, what's it called? Seagate Stormcaller is comparable, needing the same mana investment to cast 1-drops, for example, or 2-drops, but she plays well with cards in hand instead of graveyard. Casting her before a Brainstorm or a Ponder is straight value. She can also copy Accumulated Knowledges and Legacy. Interestingly, you can cast her pre-combat or during combat and see how blocks go or how opponents attack, and use that information to decide whether or not you want to double bolt or double path during combat, or wait for a second main to then, or end step to double up on Anticipate or Impulse or Brainstorm and such. The problem is she's just not as good coming off the top as Snapcaster Mage. Like I said, Snapcaster gives you access to everything that's already in your graveyard, and she requires you to have cards in hand already. She's generally quite good without a kicker, with a kicker being a weird thing that maybe a Miracles or Snow deck might activate like 1 in a million times. I guess the question is, would you ever cut Dreadhorde Arcanist or Snapcaster Mage, which are similar slots, to make room for this one? And the answer is honestly probably no. Although this young lady does things that those cards don't. So for example, she can turn a 2-mana ritual into 6 mana, so she might actually be better in combo decks. Some variant of Storm somewhere, some weird variant of Storm, like, I don't know, the back ends of Inquisition or Charbelchers or Doomsday or something that I'm not really considering right now. I feel like she will have a home, but I don't know if it will necessarily be in Delver or Tempo strategies or Control homes that Dreadhorde Arcanist or Snapcaster Mage make it into. Before we go on to the next lot of spoilers, just letting you know my dog is still in this competition to win Dog of the Month. This is my dog on screen. This is Bovril, a beautiful baby dachshund. We are 100 behind gained the closest person in the competition, so we're in second place at the moment. So if you want to click the Facebook link in the description below of this video and vote for my dog, only clicking the like or love. Don't do smileys, don't do laughy, don't do an angry face as some prick did, but only do likes and loves because they count towards the ending tally. Then please do that with the link in the description below. My dog needs to win because my dog is better than theirs. The new Omnath is cool. They've added white this time round, so now he gains life when he comes into play. Always good to see white sides of the colour pie really shining through and showing off their powerful utility. With that in mind, I guess we should talk about the white cards that I'm excited to put inside my deck box. Angel of Destiny feels like an insane life gain Soul Sisters finisher, which actually makes life gain feel like less of a joke. It makes all combat damage gain you and the opponent being hit life, so it feels like a wonderful, powerful political tool in Commander. It's a bit counterintuitive when you make a huge or giant Pride Mate attack your opponent, give them a bunch of life, and they kill the Angel before the Angel gets any payoff. That's kind of dumb. Her ultimate line of text is fucking ridiculous. She doesn't even need, so that some people have missed this, she doesn't even need to make contact or deal damage, in spite of having double strike and flying and evasion. She just one-shots people, anyone who's been attacked by her when you're 15 life over your starting life, so it's on 88, that's 55 in normal Magic. I'm just telling you numbers here. 35. I think it's like a tuned, refined, and even more trolly Felidar Sovereign, mainly because it's just one person per turn has to scoop up their cards, as opposed to just finishing the game and going again. Yeah, wrecked. Tazri is yet another 5-colour commander, and whilst I think she fucking sucks, except for perhaps a cool build-around sort of commander deck, I do grow tired of 5-colour commanders in general. I'm an old man, and I liked it when 3 colours was a push to doing commander. Nowadays, everyone's playing fucking 7 colours and 12 auto-include mana rocks that all came in the Brawl decks last year, and I mean, I used to walk uphill both ways to Commander Night at my local store, okay? You don't know how easy you've got it now, kids. I'm only 21. There are 2 white cards that have generally got me moister than an oyster for this set so far. The first is Skyclave Apparation. Oh, a 3 CMC 2/2, which is basically my go-to CMC to power and toughness ratio. It can be recruited in Legacy with Recruit of the Guard. So already my nipples are on end. They're standing to attention to hear the rest, because I hear through my nipples. I hadn't thought that through. It enters the battlefield and exiles 1 non-land, non-token permanent of 4 CMC or less. So it's not good against, I don't know, Show and Telling an Emrakul in, but it can exile, let's say, an Oko or an Uro or similar. And then when it leaves the battlefield, instead of them getting back that permanent, it's got a separate clause, which is important. I'll come to that in a moment. It gives them a permanent, an XX blue illusion creature with power and toughness equal to the card's taken CMC. Take an Oko, they get a 3/3. Take an Uro, they get a 3/3. It's going to be mainly 3/3s, I think. But either way, this is great. It removes the original thing forever. And also, the separate clause means if you flicker it with the first trigger on the stack, you get to eat 2 things. So it pairs well with Displacer, Restoration Angel to a lesser extent, Flicker Wisp, and I've been known to sleeve those cards up. The other cool thing is that the body that it leaves behind if it gets flickered itself or removed is a token, obviously. So that means that if you have a Displacer or Flicker Wisp, you have a way to remove that token as well. I really like this card. I think it's going to give some good utility that can be tutored for in Legacy D&T, and I'll definitely be trying it. It does die to Bolt, which is a thing that everyone wants to talk about all the time suddenly again. But first, before we address that, let's come to the next one. Archon of Amelia. A 3 CMC Archon. It's a flying 2/3 for 3, which is better stats, but sadly not tutable in Legacy with Recruit of the Guard. It has part of Big Thalia. Opponent's lands enter the battlefield tapped. Only the non-basic ones though, of course, just like Big Thalia. But the other thing is that it's got the Rule of Law text on. That's right, this thing is in the same slot as Eidolon the Great Rhetoric, which I've played in Modern quite a bit, because you can Coco into it, and if you're playing green-white, Nobilize to accelerate into it, and it being a 1/4 makes it hard to kill and attack through. Obviously this is a 2/3, so it's not as easy or hard to kill as Archon of Rhetoric, but that said, it does have extra text on it, which is important. Obviously, it's competing with Deafening Silence, Ether Sworn Canvas, and Legacy. So essentially, when it comes to Legacy, I think 3 mana might make it too slow. If you're trying not to die on turn 1 or 2 or 3 in Legacy, you want permanents like Deafening Silence or Ether Sworn Canvas that come down as soon as possible, ASAP. And this doesn't do that, being the 3 mana thing that it is. However, I'm probably going to try and mainboard in something like Maverick, because both of its text is relevant to pretty much every matchup in Legacy, probably. But also, it's something that you can accelerate into and play at main deck. It's not the sideboard answer that you need. And I'm probably going to try playing it in Modern too. Now, it does die to Bolt, it does die to a Braid, which Idol of the Great Rhetoric doesn't. But let's be honest, Idol of the Great Rhetoric not dying to those things is really, really unusual. Because everything we fucking play in these archetypes, in Death and Taxes / Hate Bears, or it's not even really Hate Bears, because Hate Bears used to play like Loxodon Smites and shit that didn't die to Bolt. But anything we play in D&T does die to Bolt. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed this first roundup of the things that I've seen and I like, dislike, and find interesting. There will be another roundup later this week or early next week when we get more spoilers. There might even be a third one depending just on the sheer amount of crazy shit we get. I haven't even talked about Legion Angel, which is an interesting piece of design right there in white again, but I just don't want to make the video too long. And also, I need to go for a poo. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to hit that fucking bell. Subscribe. Smash it. Smash that bell that you're smashing the back doors off of off of it, something, a car, off of a car, I don't fucking know. I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. Hope you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you all soon for some more magic later in the week. Ta-ta for now.